In this video, we will talk about the definition and concerns of feminism as well as gender studies. It has been a common contention that the human population of the world has been divided into two unequal halves for a very long time, that is, men and women. And in most societies, men seem to have been privileged over women in matters of rights, powers, opportunities, economic and social position, etc. etc. Here lies the basic contention of feminism. They argue that the privileging of males over females in society is a result of imposition of restrictions on women, the desire to control women by men, etc. etc. This system of male supremacy in society is called patriarchy or rule of the father. We also have seen, for example, in traditional societies, after marriage, women had to go to husbands' houses or have to go to husbands' houses. Even now, the trend continues. This is just one example. Or, for example, in matters of widowhood in certain religious societies, it is an exclusive domain of women, which is not a domain of privilege but of suffering. A man actually doesn't become a widow. All these kinds of things have been there in societies for a long time. Feminists study this, question this, and then try to reverse the situation. In short, feminism is a propaganda and movement for rights of women and equal rights of women as men. Now, feminism is an umbrella term today. It is better to term it feminisms rather than feminism because there are many shades of feminism. For example, Marxist school of feminists believe that the chief cause of inequality between men and women is based on the issue of earning. Since women are not were not the earning members of the societies, so men tend to have more respect in capitalist societies because one's value in capitalist system is measured on the basis of money. So their chief belief is that the Marxist feminists believe that as soon as women start earning as much as men do, or even more, the equality will prevail. However, this is not the only school. On the other hand, there is a school called liberal feminism by and large, which believes that the target of feminism is to achieve equality between women and men. To the other extent, there are those whom we can call radical feminists. They believe in dominating men by women. Since men have dominated women for so many years, they feel now women should dominate men. Radical feminism. In fact, they even advise that women should not get married because marriage is the chief institution through which patriarchy unleashes its power. There should be women understandings, comradeship, etc., but in no case any compromise with men. That is an very abstract and extreme position, and it is very difficult to live by that position. Here, since we are persons of literature, a very interesting text comes to our mind: The Edible Women, written by Margaret Atwood. In this text, she has basically shown two types of women representing implicitly these two ideas of feminism: liberal feminism and radical feminism. And the one who is a radical feminist finally fails to achieve her goals. So, we have to be careful about choosing our agenda and priorities. However, from the 80s mostly, a third element has come in addition to men and women in studies as well as movement, that is the question of the third gender, those who do not belong to either male or female, either by biological sex or by orientation. So, more and more, to include these people, feminism is now being redesignated as gender studies. While in many traditional universities in India till date, gender studies means women's studies, actually it is not the case. Gender includes even men. If you are studying gender, you are studying man too, because you cannot study women in isolation from men. And then this third gender, that is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. These are not only gender but orientations, but anyway, we can club them within third gender. So, this kind of identities are also being considered. So, just as a heterosexual woman is secondary to or has a disadvantageous position to man in a patriarchal society, the third gender person, man or woman, a gay or a lesbian, is in a further discomfortable or uncomfortable position in relation to the women. So it seems otherization is a kind of ongoing process. There is no end to it. The only thing is that there must be awareness that we are all equal and rights and opportunities should be given to all equally. In the Western world, the first definitive voice of feminism was probably Mary Wollstonecraft, who was writing in the 18th century her very famous book, A Vindication of the Rights of Women, where she tried to highlight the issue that there is no intrinsic difference between man and woman, but because women actually don't get the opportunities that men get in terms of education, etc., these things make them inferior. A bit later, we come to, I mean, 2 centuries later, in the 20th century, the most prominent literary feminist is Virginia Woolf. She also tried to make a case for women's own income in an essay called A Room of One's Own. However, the most famous book and work in this regard is the French feminist Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex, in which she categorically stated that one is not born but made a woman. That is, she rejected any biological basis whatsoever of gender difference, which of course is not corroborated by later feminists, but still, this book, The Second Sex, that is, in every matter, the secondariness of women, as she perceived it to be, was the most important uh, point from which all modern feminist movements have emerged basically. And precisely following this, we have made a distinction between gender and sex for a long time now. Though in ordinary discourse, gender and sex seem to be the same thing, in feminist and other cultural and critical studies, they are different. Sex is basically the biological category of being male or female, and gender is certain expected societal roles that are associated with these biological categories. For example, if one is a woman, one has to wear a long hair or cover her body in a much more fuller way than men, etc. etc. These things are not directly related to or outcome of their biological gender, but society expects it to be like that. Sports, for example, is a very interesting domain. Traditionally, certain sports have been reserved for men, and certain games, mostly indoor games, for women, playing with dolls, etc. So, this kind of binary between man and women, male and female, feminine and masculine, were very problematic because they were not innocent categories, but they resulted in subjugation of women, and also, now we argue, pressure on men. A lot more men commit suicide, suffer from heart attack, brain strokes than women. One chief reason is that patriarchal society expects men to be the breadwinning person, and economic pressure is a whole lot of a pressure in today's world. Women also start earning, but then the societal expectation is always from the man, male counterpart. So, patriarchy has not been favorable to men or heterosexual men either. That's why some people say that feminism is not against man, it is against patriarchy. Proper feminism is a friend of man too, if we leave out the case of radical feminism. Anyway, after Simone de Beauvoir's case in the 90s of the last decade, there have been other tones of feminism. People from the erstwhile colonies have started questioning the categories of Western feminism. They say that Western feminisms, whether by Simone de Beauvoir or Virginia Woolf or any other for that matter, take for granted the European woman as the normal point of reference, and we have been replicating or reduplicating that. So we should have our own feminism. So that is why Gayatri Spivak, Chandra Talapade Mahanti, this kind of people, and even in Africa, there has been a separate movement called womanism, which is the African version of feminism. And another chief argument is that during the colonial times, men and women from the colonies they fought shoulder to shoulder together against the colonizing men and women. So the parameters and protocols of feminism or feminist criticism of the Western world cannot be automatically obtained in the Indian world. Now there is another movement which is basically online, including women's harassment, etc., Me Too hashtag. All these things are basically sometimes divided into waves. These four waves of feminism, we call it. But these are technical definitions. We just have to remember that basically feminism is a fight for equal rights of women, equal space of women, and without depriving men from their rights. It is a claim for equality of all, and gender studies here include the rights and privileges of the third gender. Hijras in India, for instance, they bother us on train. But why do they do so? Because they are not employed by people in day-to-day work. None of us would like to employ them for certain kind of say daily chores or any other work. So there are now attempts at giving reservation to them in assembly seats, etc., etc. So gradually, a kind of humanism should prevail. That should be the message of feminism, not to start another or continue another gender war between men and women, because it is one world finally. Thank you very much for watching. We'll come with other videos very soon.